Hello, my name's Bob Willis and welcome to Defect of the Month. This month I wanted to talk about components floating. So during the reflow soldering process, components can float on the surface of the solder paste, and they can also float on the paste after reflow, so when the solder is in a liquid or semi-liquid state. Now that can be the design, it can be the volume of solder paste, but it can also be the solderability of the termination. So let's pick up on that one first of all. This is an example of classic reflow soldering using convection, but what you can see happen is the component actually lifting during the solder paste reflowing. The solder would normally tend to wet the termination and draw the component down to the surface of the pad, but in this case, no. Now there is a very simple Bob Willis test for solderability of components, which if you look at some of the past Defect of the Months, we've illustrated, but we're more than happy to tell you how to do it if you would like that. Now, incorrect design rules can lead to lifting. And we're talking about, first of all, the pads. You can't have a generic set of footprints for components. Yes, if it's 1206 and 0402, then the package dimensions are fairly well defined. So that's fine, but you've got to bear in mind that some components are not generic, and there may be subtle differences between suppliers. And the key thing is making sure that the solder paste on the pad is not lifting the body of the component as opposed to the termination, because if you get the design rules wrong, then that may be an issue. However, if you've got perhaps poor pad dimensions in relationship to the terminations, there's no reason why you can't actually move the solder paste to a slightly different position on the pad, or even onto the solder resist, and let the paste come back to the joint. But if it's starting off underneath the package, it will lift up the package and potentially leave you with an open soldered joint. So, solderability of terminations, poor design. Now, if you've got a poor design, one of the things that you can see with components lifting or floating on the solder, it is exaggerated when you're using vapor phase soldering because of the speed of wetting, and the actual wettability of that surface is much better in a no air environment. So with vapor phase, what we've got to have is more time controlling the heat input to the printed circuit board before reflow. If you go from, let's say, just below reflow temperature straight up to reflow temperature, there's a very small window. So what it will tend to do is exaggerate the movement of the component. It's the same with nitrogen. If you're using a nitrogen in your reflow process and you're getting suddenly a lot of lifted component terminations, one of the simple engineering tricks is just to reduce the nitrogen level within the reflow process. Because ideally, if you've never had a problem and then suddenly you have a problem, you've changed your process, going possibly from air reflow to nitrogen. So reduce the nitrogen, and that quite often will reduce the problem of lifted components. But you've got to go back. Don't use this as a sticking plaster. You've got to go back and you've got to correct the problem, which is the design or the solder paste volume. So do that in combination, and then you should eliminate any future problems. My name's Bob Willis, and thank you for listening to Defect of the Month. And if you've got a defect that is really annoying you and you can't find a solution on any of the forums, drop me an email. I'd be more than happy to create another Defect of the Month video in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.